A very good afternoon to our rugby league expert, Paul Dalligan. Good afternoon, Paul, and a very eventful round 12 so far.
It has been, even in the lead up to round 12. We had the hook came out for Hook. So as we've been predicting for some time, Anthony Griffin, a dead man walking. If you were ever going to teach at management school, maybe as part of an MBA, this is how you don't manage a football team. You can't have a guy on eggshells on death row in the role. You've got to move decisively and swiftly. But on a positive note for the Dragons, I did predict this to those who wanted to listen. The new coach theory struck again. And the Dragons had a big win over the Roosters in the end of the match. So it's amazing to me always, this new coach theory, whether they're underperforming or whether they find a new level or whether it's a tribute to the old guy. But I was at a function and I was telling people about it. They said, are you going to unload your money on North Melbourne? And they almost did it as well. So I think what it was, you've just got the frustrations of coaching once you lose the players. But even if you look at a winning coach this weekend at Craig Bellamy, he didn't look too happy about it. I don't know if you saw him when they won the match. I've seen happier people at a funeral.
Yeah, we'll get to that shortly, Paul. Let's start on Thursday night. The Broncos, I think, being found out, they've played Souths, Penrith and Melbourne in 3 out of the last 4 games, lost each one of them, and they didn't look any better on Thursday night at home. The Panthers comfortable winners. They
were, and I don't suggest you reach for the vintage red pen. Do you have an orange pen? Because that's where I'd put the Broncos. I certainly don't think that they're capable at the moment of winning it. They were missing their best player, Adam Reynolds, and he is the guy that drives that very good team around. But I just think they don't quite have it. But they also combine with a white-hot Panthers team who would have beaten most teams. And the scary thing for the rest of the competition is they didn't really get out into overdrive, the Panthers. So they're certainly surging towards grand final contention, the Panthers.
They did the work on the ground, Paul. They had over 2,000 metres gained. The Broncos had 700 metres less. You can't win a game when you're giving up territory like that.
No, and they, with Cleary as well, will be the first player picked for New South Wales. Jerome Luai looks like he's played himself back into a number 6 jersey, which would have to mean Nico Hines will be playing off the bench because the second guy picked will be James Tedesco. I think he'd have to be retired for Fittler not to pick him at the back. So we are stacked for talent in the backs, and we've even had Jack Whiten, who would have been one of the first pick, retired. So we've got a lot of talent there. But as we've seen for how many years now, just because you got the talent in blue jerseys doesn't mean they win.
No, I was interested listening to Kevin Walters in his press conference after the match, Paul. He said that the Broncos were learning about themselves. We're into round 12. Wouldn't you want to know all about your team by now?
You would, whether it's a work in progress, whether he's got his eye on building a dynasty. But I guess it is the first year that they've been really good. So that's quite candid to say that. A lot of coaches wouldn't. But I do like that as opposed to having a rigid game plan, which can be found out. A lot of teams start the season e-sport and then they get found out. So it seems like he's ready to consult with players, ready to change his game plans, and he'll have to take on the likes of the Rabbitohs, Panthers, the top teams.
Well, I was looking forward to Friday night's double header, Paul, and the first game didn't let me down. That had you couldn't have written a better ending for the Dragons, leading 12-0 at half-time, gave up the lead to a Tedesco try, a very exciting try right at the death, and then the Dragons somehow managed to cross the line again and score the winning points with the conversion.
Yeah, and just some joy for Dragons fans. No one likes how it played out. Whether he's a great coach or not, he did deserve some respect, some dignity. The biggest issue there at the Dragons is Ben Hunt, who's on over $1 million a year. If I'm running the Dragons, I'd probably allow teams like your Dogs who are interested to talk to him. You accept you're in a rebuilding phase. They've got a guy, Jaden Sullivan, who's killing it in reserve grade. I think you move on Ben Hunt and a large chunk of his over $1 million salary, not because he can't play, but you just have to rebuild with this new coach. But if I'm a new coach coming in, let's call me Jason Riles, I would be screaming blue murder if they let the best player go. But if he's a strategist, Jason Rolls, who will be the coach for the Dragons, he perhaps would realise if you move Ben Hunt on and you've got a lot more money in the war chest to build a team from the ground up.
Would the Bulldogs have that much money left?
Well, they've got Phil Gould, who's very powerful. I think they might have some money if they move some players on. If the Rabbitohs can fit Jack Whiten in, I think your Dogs could fit in Ben Hunt, and he could turn your team into top 8 specials that just pretty much as soon as he arrives, you'll see a better team, well organised. With him and Matt Burton in the halves, I think that would be quite a combination. But you've got Carl Oloapu, I think it's pronounced. He's the Broncos phenom, and they were very disappointed that he went because they invested a lot of time and energy into him. But he'll be in the halves today with Matt Burton, and hopefully he'll go a long way to showing whether or not you need Ben Hunt.
After that loss, can we not use the orange pen, but can we use the red pen through the Roosters?
Oh, not yet. No, not a team like that. I think that they will still find something. They're too good a team and too good a coach. I still think they'll make the 8.
I reckon they're gone, Paul. I reckon.
Well, okay. How about we have a Red Rooster all-you-can-eat bet on that then?
All right, let's do that.
Smuggle in some beers into the Red Rooster. Sit at the back there in the corner somewhere.
All right.
They're normally pretty brightly lit, those places. I don't know how you smuggle a 6-pack in, but we'll try.
All right, Paul. Now the game,
and then of course I'll say yes, the Rabbitohs were humbled, and we were dismantled by a red hot Eels team who I think we might have had the red pen through them, so we might have to get the reversible, the liquid paper out because we might have to unred pen them if we can.
Well, Jason Demetrio after the game said we weren't motivated. I'd agree with him.
Yeah, we didn't play like we were there. The Eels were just fantastic. Mitchell Moses showing why they've moved heaven and earth to sign him to a 5-year deal. Couldn't have played a better game. I think he was flawless, Mitchell Moses. So uncanny that he's great mates with Luke Brooks, who did something similar at the Tigers, which we'll talk about shortly. But also the Sharks, way too good for the Knights. We've got the Sharks in the green pen category. We put the red pen through the Knights a long time ago. But the Panthers, Rabbitohs and Sharks and the Storm, I think, are the only 4 teams that can win this competition. I'll say it now.
The Knights are certainly in that category of team that have a split personality, Paul. They played like champions and ran up that many points last week. It didn't matter. Yeah. And yesterday against the Sharks, they only scored 6.
Yeah. Sharks are very erratic, and I think the only more erratic team though than the Knights would have to be the Titans, who we'll get to, who your Dogs are playing this afternoon. But the Sharks are very impressive. They're a well-coached team. They've got the best player in the game, Nico Hines, steering them round. They'll go a long way in this competition. So that was pretty sobering for Knights fans, though.
I'll tell you what was more sobering for North Queensland Cowboys. They ran into a white-hot Wests Tigers yesterday.
Didn't think we'd be saying that. They were a debacle not long ago, and they're on fire now. They're on a good run. So 66 points is a record for either Wests or for Tigers or West Tigers. So there's a really good footage, and I hope they get a photo of it, but there's a vintage 80s jersey, Tigers, and there's the old school scoreboard they still use there, and the blokes in front of it giving it the thumbs up in front of the 60 as they put the 6 up, because that 6 wouldn't have gone into that box too often. That's would normally only be in the second box. So to see a 60 score at Leichhardt Oval would have been a real treat for the Tigers faithful.
Now, given West Tigers improving form, and it hasn't been just yesterday, over the last 5 weeks, they've played pretty well, and the Rabbitohs did struggle against them. And I thought the scoreline flattered the Rabbitohs last week.
Yeah.
But I think West Tigers are closer to getting where you had them on the ladder than where they were.
They are, and they haven't been that bad. Even through their horror patch, they just weren't winning. Who was that cricketer that made that comment? I'm batting really well. I just keep getting out.
That was Greg Chappell. Yes.
So I think the Tigers, it's harsh to just look at scores. they've been playing well. They're getting their structures together. They've got a very new team. They've had injuries. But yeah, they're good to watch. They're very exciting to watch. Luke Brooks, no more deserving player in the game. It's interesting the fans were cheering his name at the end. I think like Damien Hardwick at Richmond, there was a time there when they all wanted him gone. So a lot of those fans might want to have a look at themselves to turn around the way they did. But it's good for Luke Brooks, who's much maligned, and I think he's a much better player than he gets credit for.
There was one figure that really stuck out to me in that game, and that was the completion rate, Paul.
Yeah.
It shows, how switched on the West Tigers were, but I also think it shows just how much pressure North Queensland didn't put on. West Tigers had a 93% completion rate. That's almost unheard of. That's
Bellamy-esque. And I just have to wonder what's wrong at the Cowboys. We had Todd Payton being described as some sort of saviour, and he's got a very good team there. He's got some amazing talent. Very, very, very good team with a lot of origin-level players in it. So there's something wrong at the Cowboys. I'm not sure whether he has to change his game plan up. That's why I was saying I didn't mind the Kevin Walters comment. We're learning about ourselves, because I think the Cowboys are stuck in a rut and going backwards very fast.
Takes me to probably one of the most entertaining games of the weekend so far, Paul. Dolphins 16, Storm 24. Dolphins not disgraced. The Storm a very good win away, although I think Bellamy would be pretty disappointed with the second half. It was 24-4 at halftime. The Storm didn't score after halftime.
Yeah, and that's why you saw him at the end. You'd think 99% likely that his team had just lost. I think you're seeing with the Dolphins, though, that the two players that were a difference for the Storm are Munster and Hughes, and they're not surprisingly both on each about $1 million if you average it out. What the Dolphins need is a player of that calibre. So I think it's amazingly brave what the Dolphins have managed, but they're just missing that one player. And that's why Bennett went so hard at trying to get a superstar. And it's still being talked about that Whiten snubbed him, because I think if the Dolphins had, well, you can do the maths. If Dolphins had Munster, they would have won that game. So if you're going to get $1 million person into the Dolphins, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. But I hate to say they're slightly overachieving, and I still maintain that they'll finish where I said they would, which is outside the 8. But a very good return to form for Storm. I meant to say I was at a function for work Friday night and having a chat to the Storm CEO about how tough coaching is, and he said Bellamy's the first in and the last to leave. So you might think when you reach that level that you can cut some corners or you don't have to work so hard, but he's the first into the place and last out at the Storm headquarters.
Well, he sets the standard, doesn't he, Paul?
He does, and that's why if he had been high-fiving and cheering the air when they had such a shocking second half, he wouldn't be where he is now. It's a brutal profession, though, coaching.
Yeah, Wayne Bennett didn't have a smile on his face, except for one thing in his press conference. He was asked whether his player that got sent off would be suspended and not be able to play in Origin. And Bennett's response was, with that wry smile that he often gets, well, he's an Origin player, isn't he? I doubt that he'll be suspended. Then the press decided to question him more on it. He said, well, hang on, you saw an Origin player last week touch a referee. He touched a referee. He got fined. He's playing in Origin. He said, if you're an Origin player, you'll be playing in Origin.
Yeah, that was a strange incident. Jerome Luai thought it was one of his players and was going to celebrate. Lucky he didn't go in for the butt pat or a grab of something else like they often do, or a high five or whatever. But when he realised it wasn't his player, he apologised. But contact with the referee is contact with the referee. I think Bennett doesn't miss much. And I'm always interested this time of year that coaches talking up their players for Origin. As a coach, I'd probably prefer my player not playing Origin, given how tough it is and the risk of injury. But I guess they've got a duty to their players, and they want their players to do well. They take great pride in their players, and you see the coaches regularly push their players to say he'd be perfect in Origin. And I like that part of the game, that Origin seems to take greater precedence over self-serving interests, such as that he'll be available for club duty. That's why you saw Jack Whiten pull out, because he's focused on the Raiders. And we had that as well with big, the Raiders prop forward has decided not to play Origin as well. They're obviously very set on the Raiders making the 8, and I don't think it's Ricky Stewart's pressure. It's big Josh Papali'i. I think that they just want to focus on the Raiders.
All right, Paul, let's look at today's games. 2-4 set for decision. The early game, the 2:00 game, my Bulldogs, who are now last on the ladder, playing the Titans. Titans are in the same category as the North Queensland Cowboys. Anything could happen with the Titans. They could win it by a mile or get thrashed.
Well, their two main players at the Titans, I think, are Mr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So it'd be nice if you could just see on the back of the jersey which one's turned up, because they are amazing when they're on. I'm hoping a friend of mine's got a multi in the 7th leg is the Dogs. So I'd hate him to jinx you, Professor, but I do think you'll win today. Matt Burton, captain number 7, obviously the most important player. And as we said, Carl Oluwapu is the one to watch at number 6. He'll want to show that we don't need Ben Hunt in the joint, because I'm a pretty sharp player myself. So I think the Dogs will win, but my word, you couldn't predict it with any certainty. And I think your slight outsiders, it really depends which Titans team turns up.
And thoughts on a possible scoreline?
26-20, the Dogs. I think I went close with the 2 winners I picked last Sunday.
Bear with me, Paul. I'll just go back through my little book here. 26-18, you had the Knights winning, and 18-10 the Sharks.
Okay, well, that wasn't too far off.
No. All right, so the 4:00 game, the Raiders who you were talking about, playing Schooners Sea Eagles, 7th versus 12th at Bruce Stadium. It'll be pretty cool there on a wintry, almost wintry Canberra afternoon.
You'd want to pack your thermals there, and if Schooner had a schooner out, it'd probably freeze, I'd say. It'd be tough to get out of the glass. But I'm very surprised the Raiders are $1.60. I think they're a very good chance at home. They are surging. They're one of the hottest teams in the comp. I wondered about that price, and I had a look into the team list, and Josh Schuster's back, who's a big man with very good touch. He's back at number 6, and Cherry Evans at 7. That must be the reason why the bookies are keeping them safe. But all respect to Schooner, there just seems to be some internal issues there. And unfortunately, Schooner, I'll be very surprised if Manly wins that. I think the Raiders at home are a very, very good bet.
Well, let me ask you this, Paul. The coach in his first year, in my opinion, didn't have that great a pedigree before he got there. And this Sea Eagles team is now showing a little bit of what the coach's previous team showed. They didn't win many games.
No, I think he got lucky in arriving at a Rabbitohs team that was ready to peak. So he certainly had some great cattle there. You're nothing as a coach without cattle. But, yeah, he's certainly not setting the world alight at Manly. But the interesting thing at the Raiders, when you've got Jack Whiten telling his teammates, I'm going to a better team, and it seems to have united the team as opposed to making him a black sheep, if you will. So I'm very surprised that that team's been united, but they obviously want to send him out a winner.
All right, and a final score, Raiders Sea Eagles?
22-14, I've got Raiders.
All right, and just before we finish, the Geldings managed to send me some tips. You might like to write these ones down, Paul. Yep. A Sandown Lakeside track this afternoon. It's a soft 7. The rail's in the true position. So soft 7, it'll be pretty muddy, I would have thought. In race 1, he likes horse 1, Optime. Race 2, horse 2, Britannicus. That's in the Australian steeplechase. Race 3, horse 2, the Ladbrokes handicap, Farrago. Race 5, horse 1 in the Australian hurdle, Saunter Boy. And a horse that he's got a little bit of an interest in, Paul, which doesn't win all that often. In race 8, horse 8, Drop the Mic. And let me tell you, if you got the super out, it's showing $41 fixed at the moment.
You're dropping more than a mic. I'd be dropping a bottle of champers, I think, if that was the salute.
Be more than a bottle of champers at $41.
And I'd be dropping a few lobster carcasses into the bin as well, I'd say.
You almost might be able to give up work, Paul.
Yeah, that's it. The boss listens to this show, so no, love it there. It's all good. Yeah.
All right, Paul. Many thanks for joining me on today's show, and look forward to talking to you next week.
Go the Dogs. Yep.
Cheers.